Jyotir Arvinda Satyam Jnanam Satyam Jnanam Jyotir Arvinda Jyotir Arvinda. So when we are doing works in life, when we are working through life, how many of us feel burdened quite a bit of the time when we are working? Can I have a show of hands? Yeah? Sometimes, yeah. Why do we feel burdened?
When I feel I'm doing it, I'm burdened. When I feel that there is somebody doing through me or with me, holding my hand, I'm burdened.
Right? When I feel responsible for the work, then I feel burdened, right? When I feel that I have to get it done, I feel I'd rather be doing something else, but I have to do this, then I feel burdened.
I mean, the work, for me personally, the work isn't burdensome, the outcome is.
So the fruit of the work.
The pressure of reaching an outcome is what I would say is pressurizing to me, not the process of doing it.
Right. So the fear of not getting the outcome, in other words, fear of failure, failing to get what you want. So there's self-doubt as you work.
Yeah, like to finish it, to get it done. Have to do it.
Huh. Deadline and the outcome, both.
In the sense, having to reach that outcome, like you study for a test, I don't mind studying for the test, but I don't enjoy the pressure that I have to score a particular way. Or
So the outcome, the fruit, that's that performance pressure. So
I feel deadlines also sometimes matter. You enjoy the work if there is no pressure.
no pressure.
And at least for me, the happiness comes more if I have to finish that particular thing.
Right. So the pressure of deadlines, pressure of outcomes, pressure of wanting to be doing something else but you're forced to do this, those are the things that sometimes oppress us. So let's read from, there's just these 2 lines of Savitri that it begins with. Whether it seem good or evil to men's eyes, only for good the secret will can work. And then these lines from the synthesis of yoga on what is the secret will. Only for good the secret will can work, but where is the secret will, whose is it, and what is it all about? So Sri Aurobindo says, there is a secret divine will, eternal and infinite. Eternal, it's always been there, and infinite. Omniscient, it knows everything. Omnipotent, it is all powerful. That expresses itself in the universality and in each particular of all these apparently temporal and infinite, inconscient or half-conscient things. This is the power of presence meant by the Gita when it speaks of the Lord within the heart of all existences, who turns all creatures as if mounted on a machine by the illusion of nature. So Krishna says not even a leaf falls from the tree to the ground without the divine will. So no work could be coming to your plate without the sanction. No work or the lack of it could be coming without the sanction. This divine will is not an alien power or presence. It's not something outside you, higher than you. It is intimate to us, and we ourselves are part of it. For it is our own highest self that possesses and supports it. So this will is the will of our own ocean self, our deeper self. It's not an external will imposed on us, which is why we say nothing comes to you without the invitation of your soul. You may say that I don't want this person, that circumstance, etc. in my life, but that's your mental vital will. If the soul didn't will it, it wouldn't be part of your life. So this higher will is not alien to you. That brings great solace. No, it's not something outside me. It's my own deepest will.
Can I ask you? There's a lot of this whole thing of you can use your power of attraction and you can will things with your life and all that. So is that true?
In a limited way, there is a truth that your thoughts have the power of manifestation. But if the power of manifestation of thoughts is this much, the power of manifestation of the soul is eternal and infinite. And if something is not meant for your highest good, however much you use positive affirmations and all this new age thinking, it won't happen, because
The other way around, supposing you always get what you want or very often, so then what is it?
what do you mean?
In the sense that if you really want something, you get it.
Good, then it's meant for you, it's good for you, so you got it. Then your mental will is in sync with the will of your deepest.
But were you always going to get it, or you just manifest?
I think the urge to think positive and manifest it also comes from that secret will. Because your whole thought, you think you're thinking it, but it's being generated from somewhere deeper than you. It's not you who are really thinking it. Even the thought to think positive and manifest it comes from a higher will. Sorry? Well, Sri Aurobindo has that aphorism that God is so powerful that he can choose to be weak when it serves his purposes. If you are born with certain samskaras that need to be overcome, you'll suffer with the negative thinking till the pain of it pushes you out of it. So, the divine will is not an alien power or presence. It is intimate to us, and we ourselves are part of it, for it is our own highest self that possesses and supports it. Only it is not our conscious mental will. It rejects often enough what our conscious will accepts, and accepts what our conscious will rejects. For while the secret one knows all and every whole and each detail, our surface mind knows only a little part of things. Our will is conscious in the mind and what it knows. It knows by the thought only. The divine will is superconscious to us because it is in its essence supramental, and it knows all because it is all. Our highest self, which possesses and supports this universal power, is not our ego self, not our personal nature. It is something transcendent and universal, of which these smaller things are only foam and flowing surface. If we surrender our conscious will and allow it to be made one with the will of the eternal, then and then only shall we attain to a true freedom. Living in divine liberty, we shall no longer cling to the shackled so-called free will, a puppet freedom ignorant, illusory relative, bound to the errors of its own inadequate vital motives and mental figures. So this means that we'll have freedom only when we don't have a personal free will. when we are in such a state of surrender that, okay, the other passages will shed more light on it. So I'll halt here. So there is a will acting on our lives. Its purpose is not to give us immediate happiness, but to take us home to our real self. And further, Mother says consciousness develops best through work done as an offering to the divine. That's why Mother and Sri Aurobindo gave great importance to work, but work done in the right spirit. Because Sri Aurobindo says meditation and all that works on bringing the inner being forward. But it's work which works on the outer being. When you're working and you're working from the right spirit, that's the area where the vital gets transformed. Because Mother and Sri Aurobindo says we don't want a quiescent, passive vital. We want a vital that's totally transformed and at the service of the divine. And meditation does very little to really transform the vital. You'll go into a good state, but when triggers will come, you'll still keep reacting unless it's a dynamic meditation. So Sri Aurobindo emphasizes that dynamic meditation much more than the just quiescent. That meditation also has its place, but when he says all life is yoga, everything should be done in a meditative state. That's the aspiration. So, I mean, when she says I'm in things also, most yogas will not give so much importance to material things, but Mother gives a lot of importance to matter. So to handle all material things mentally, always saying, I'm remembering what she says, I'm in things also. So whatever you touch, the constant remembrance that this is also God. People, things, everything. So Mother says, another remarkable sign of the conversion of your vital, owing to Agni's influence, is that you face your difficulties and obstacles with a smile. You do not sit anymore in a sackcloth and ashes, lamenting over your mistakes and feeling utterly crestfallen because you are not at the moment quite up to the mark. You simply chase away depression with a smile. 100 mistakes do not matter to you. With a smile you recognize that you have erred, and with a smile you resolve not to repeat the folly in the future. Can you open this? The converted vital has a prescience, a foreknowledge of the victory, keeps up a will towards progress, which never turns its back, feels full of the energy which is born of its certitude about the triumph of the divine, whom it is aware of always in itself as doing whatsoever is necessary, and infusing in it the unfaltering power to resist and finally conquer its enemies. Why should it despair or complain? The transformation is going to be. So our normal outer vital is full of doubts, but a transformed vital has a prescience of victory. It knows that however many times I stumble, however many mistakes I make, once I've felt that touch is never going to let me down, and it never sort of flogs itself for errors. I keep repeating this. In Mother's yoga, there's no place for guilt. She said it 100 times that guilt is the most corrosive emotion to your growth. Whatever you've done, look at it, learn from it, and smile, move on. So she says, you smile at error and you smile at the will to not repeat it and move on.
If there's an error, there's usually a consequence.
Huh?
So what one normally is afraid of is the consequence of the error more than having.
So Mother says, so consequence, you're talking about karma in a sense.
Or whatever
So that's karma you're talking about. What are you talking about? Karma? So mother has said that suppose you've really hurt somebody. Just to say sorry to the person isn't going to erase it. But if you work on the samskar in you that made you hurt the person and you erase that samskar, then you're erasing the karma. So if you keep feeling guilt, in fact, you feel too ill-equipped to work on yourself. But that's what such wisdom, she says, whatever you've done, don't grovel in guilt about it. Learn from it, smile at it and move on.
So the learning is through the changing of your karma, of your sanskar.
Change that in you which made you react like that. And you can never change it if you're groveling in guilt, no? Guilt incapacitates you. It takes away your vision. In order to change something in you, you have to have the capacity to look into yourself. But guilt puts a fog. You can't see it, so you can't change it. You can only see, I'm bad, I did this, I did that, but you can't look at the root of it inside you. So you simply chase away depression with a smile. 100 mistakes do not matter to you. With a smile you recognize that you have erred, and with a smile you resolve not to repeat the folly in the future. So beautiful, no? She makes it so simple. The converted vital has a prescience of the victory, keeps up a will towards progress which never turns its back, feels full of the energy which is born of its certitude about the triumph of the divine, whom it is aware of always in itself as doing whatsoever is necessary, and infusing in it the unfaltering power to resist and finally conquer its enemies. Why should it despair or complain? The transformation is going to be. Nothing will ever stop it. Nothing will frustrate the degree of the omnipotent. Cast away, therefore, all diffidence and weakness, and resolve to endure bravely a while before the great day arrives when the long battle turns into an everlasting victory. So, what are the two qualities of a converted vital? To sum up, it never despairs. Okay, it always smiles at difficulties. Difficulties don't have the capacity to pull it down. And secondly, it never doubts. It never gets carried away by the appearance of life. However it appears, it has its faith that I will reach. Not even grumbling in you won't complain, no? If you're smiling, how will you complain? Only if you're unhappy, you'll complain. So these lines from Savitri, his failure is not failure whom God leads. And somewhere, hopefully, all of us are being led by God. That's why we are here. So his failure is not failure whom God leads. Through all the slow, mysterious march goes on. An immutable power, an unchanging power, has made this mutable world a self-fulfilling transience, treads man's road, the driver of the soul upon its path. Who is the driver of the soul upon its path? That immutable power that has made the world. It knows its step, its way is inevitable. And how shall the end be vain when God is guide? If God is guiding me, how can my end be vain? I can go through 1,000 failures, but as the next passage says, my splendid failures sum to victory. Arisen from the tragic crash of life, arisen from the body's torture and death, the spirit rises mightier by defeat. Its god-like wings grow wider with each fall. Its splendid failures sum to victory. Next passage. The signs of the consecration of the vital in action are these among others. The feeling, not merely the idea or the aspiration, that all the life and the work are the mother's. The feeling that all the life and the work are the mother's, and a strong joy of the vital nature in this consecration and surrender. A consequent calm content and disappearance of egoistic attachment to the work and its personal results. But at the same time, a great joy in the work and in the use of the capacities for the divine purpose. So, normally the motive force of work, our work is where our ego comes to the forefront the most, isn't it? Why are we so attached to outcomes? Because the outcomes define us. I'm a good worker, cook, student, teacher, whatever, if the outcome is good, and that gives me my identity, and for that moment the pleasure and the security of knowing I'm capable. I want to feel capable. But suppose I have worked on myself, and this may not be available to many of us right now, but it is something that can get accessible in the future. Suppose I've worked on myself enough that I have felt mother's presence. Now all of us have felt it at some point or the other, right? Some point, maybe fleetingly. But suppose I have grown into feeling that presence more and more, such that nothing gives me more joy than feeling that presence. Then when I work, the motive force of the work is to feel that presence while I'm working more than the reward and the glad eye of the world. Do you understand what I'm saying? Any questions? Yeah? Yeah? So that is a sign of the conversion of the vital. Right now the vital is totally in the hands of ego-driven motives and desires. But if that vital gets transformed to the extent that it's seeking to feel that presence, it's hungry for that presence more than compliments and praise and attention and even the self-regard in my own head that yeah, I'm capable, I'm good, then what you look for you'll find, no? Whatever you seek is what you'll find in life. Then while I'm working, if one part of me is constantly looking to feel that presence, then I'm getting my sustenance from there, my joy from there. My joy doesn't depend on how much people praise me, what's the outcome, how am I ranked, how am I graded. My joy comes from feeling that presence working through me. You have a question? Is it possible? What do you all feel? Very much.
And you can, at least I feel that, I'm not saying you can feel the difference when the other thing happens.
Yeah. You know, sometimes you may do very well, and you look very great in the eyes of the world. But if you've done it from the ego, you'll feel a very distasteful feeling in your mouth. It doesn't make you feel good. Once you felt that presence, then when you're working out of ego, it's a very second class taste. There was a beautiful story. There was a great yogi who had great miraculous powers, and once he was called in an assembly, and all his disciples begged him that, come on, show us some miracle. And he was actually a very solid yogi, but for one moment his ego took over. And he thought, well, if I show them a miracle, it will help them to believe in God. Ego justifies in various ways, no? So he says, okay, and there was a table with a whole lot of food on it, with a tablecloth. And he told everyone, move the table away and the cloth will hold the food. And the people said, how is that possible? He's saying, just do it. And they did it, and the cloth held the food. And the whole assembly was starstruck and applauded him. But at that moment, he felt such a sinking feeling in his heart. And he said, I have betrayed God. I pretended to myself that I'm displaying this to strengthen their faith in God. But actually, I'm doing it for my ego. And he swore that I will never use my powers to show off ever again. Now compare this with another story in the life of Sant Narsi Mehta. So Narsi Mehta was very, very close to Lord Krishna, and there's one story that in a vision Krishna had come to him and given him a pair of karatals, you know what the sons use, and said that if ever you're in difficulty, play these karatals and sing the Kedar Tal and I will come to your rescue. Now he had a lot of enemies because when anyone shines, people are jealous. So this person had gone and poisoned the king's mind that he's a hoax and he's just fooling people. Test him. Tell him that you have a temple of Krishna and you have put your necklace around Krishna's neck. Lock the temple. If he's really such a miracle monger, tell him that next day the necklace should be on his lap through the closed temple door. Now this person who had plotted this, Narsi Mehta, was always helping people and never had money. So he was always borrowing money. So he borrowed money from this person who took a pledge from him that till you return my money, you cannot sing the Kedar Tal or you give me your karatals. So he had blocked him in every way. So Narsi Mehta was outside the temple and he was just praying to Krishna that, Krishna, I'm not interested in showing that I'm a great man because I'm nothing. But if you don't do something, people will lose faith in you because they have faith in you through me, through the songs I sing for you. So I'm asking you to do something because I don't want them to lose faith in you. And he left it to Krishna. And the story goes that somebody went knocking. Dharnidhar was the man who had given him the loan, knocking on his door, gave him the money, and Narsi was just sitting in prayer, and the pledge, the note came on his lap. He knew Krishna has worked his miracle, so he sang the Kedar Tal and the necklace came. So I'm just telling you, these are two different stories. Narsi also did a miracle, but he didn't do it out of self-interest. He did it out of his love for God. Whereas the first, so he felt exalted at the end of the miracle. But the first person who did it for his own ego, he felt a sinking feeling in his heart. Now we may not be capable of miracles, but we all have little gifts, no? And whenever we use those gifts to show off, the ego comes forward, and wherever the ego comes forward, the self retreats. And you won't have a pleasant taste in your mouth, which is why for most of us who felt Mother's presence, preening ends up making us feel hollow. Showing off our gifts finally makes us feel very hollow inside. So, the signs of the consecration of the vital in action are these among others. The feeling, not merely the idea or the aspiration, that all the life and work are the Mother's, and a strong joy of the vital nature in this consecration and surrender. All work is yours, and when I'm doing it, knowing that you are the doer. When I feel that I'm the doer, I'm very burdened. But if I know that you are the doer, and whatever gifts you've given me, I'm offering them to you for your purposes, and to work out of that, you work in freedom. Why are you free? What shackles you? Your desire for outcome, your desire for affirmation from the world for your work. But if that's not the motive of your work, if the motive of your work is just mother, to give yourself to her, to feel her presence, then you're not chained to the outcome. Then you're free while working, and there can be infinite joy in doing. Otherwise, we often feel that we can feel joyful when we are just chilling, but we can't have joy in doing. But in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, that's a necessary step to achieve. Joy in doing. Works are a very important part of his yoga, but working in the right spirit. A consequent calm content and disappearance of egoistic attachment to the work and its personal results, but at the same time a great joy in the work and in the use of the capacities for the divine purpose. The feeling that the divine force is working behind one's actions and leading at every moment. A persistent faith which no circumstance or event can break. If difficulties occur, they raise not mental doubts or an inert acquiescence, but the firm belief that with sincere consecration, the divine Shakti will remove the difficulties, and with this belief, a greater turning to her and dependence on her for that purpose. When there is full faith and consecration, there comes also a receptivity to the force which makes one do the right thing and take the right means, and then circumstances adapt themselves and the result is visible. To choose without preference and execute without desire is the great difficulty at the very root of the development of true consciousness and self-control. What is at the root of the development of the true consciousness? That we are not able to choose without preference and execute without desire. We prefer to do this over that. We prefer this outcome over that. And we have a great desire that whatever we do should be received in a certain way, appreciated in a certain way. But when we can work without this, then we develop the true consciousness. To choose in this sense means to see what is true and bring it into existence. What a marvelous sentence. What he's really saying is that if you can, to the extent that you work like this without preference and without desire, without a personal bias, then a vision opens up. You see what is true in the moment and you pull it into existence. Otherwise, your personal biases will distort the truth. The truth is there, but you won't see it because you're too consumed by your personal biases. So, examples, okay. So very often it happens that when I'm teaching a yoga class, suppose I've taught one theme on one day and it's worked very well, and I feel that next day I'll teach the same thing out of a mental thing, out of a preference that it's worked then, it'll work today. So I go in, and if I teach out of that mental bias, the previous day class was so alive, but this class is dead. So then if I'm quiet, I put aside that bias. Yeah, it worked very well yesterday, but what's the truth of the moment today? and I put away that bias that again I want a good class like I had it yesterday, although it was a very solid theme, and I put away that bias and I let what else is coming come, then that's seeing the truth without a personal bias, without a mental thought that it worked then so it should work now, because truth is very dynamic. It changes moment to moment and we mustn't fossilize it with our mental preferences. To choose in this sense means to see what is true and bring it into existence, and to choose thus without the least personal bias for anything, any person, action, circumstance, is exactly what is most difficult for an ordinary human being. You must learn to act without any preference, free from all attractions and likings, taking one's stand solely on the truth which guides, and having chosen in accordance with the truth the necessary action, one must carry it out without any desire. If you observe yourself attentively, you will see that before acting you need an inner impetus, an inner motive, something which pushes you. In the ordinary man, this impetus is generally desire. This desire ought to be replaced by a clear, precise, constant vision of the truth. Rama, he's answered your question. So instead of the desire that my work be received like this, I should get this outcome, that desire ought to be replaced by a clear, precise, constant vision of the truth. Some call this the voice of God or the will of God. The true meaning of these words has been falsified. So I prefer to speak of the truth instead of God, the truth. They say, no, Satyam Shivam Sundaram, the truth is beauty, is God. So, though this is but a very limited aspect of that which we cannot name, but which is the source and the goal of all existence. I deliberately do not use the word God because religions have given this name to an all-powerful being who is other than his creation and outside it. This is not correct. It will be better to do the work as a sadhana for getting rid of the defects rather than accept the defects as a reason for not doing the work. Suppose I have an incapacity, then I avoid doing it because I don't want to face failure. But Mother says, don't do that. It will be better to do the work as sadhana for getting rid of the defects rather than accept the defects as a reason for not doing the work. Instead of accepting these reactions as if they were an unchangeable law of your nature, you should make up your mind that they must no longer come, calling down the aid of the Mother's force to purify the vital and eliminate them altogether. If you believe that the trouble in the body must come, naturally it will come. Rather fix in your mind the idea and will that it must not come and will not come. If it tries to come, reject it and throw it away from you. So very often when you work, that's the time you see your incapacities, isn't it? All of us have our gifts and our incapacities in our surface being. But it's good to know that in our God nature we are all capable. Then why has the God nature chosen these particular unique incapacities in us? Because again, God is so powerful that He can choose to be weak when it suits His purposes. but to remember that I'm all capable in my deeper nature. And I have donned these incapacities for the purpose of evolution. They are not the ultimate statement on me. I can grow out of anything. In the ashram, there were people who couldn't draw a straight line, and they flourished into budding artists. People who had never written became poets. People who couldn't sing, they sang so beautifully. So whatever our incapacities are now, they should never be a final statement on what we can grow into. We keep working with them, inviting the mother's force, and everything, that beautiful line, all things shall change in God's transfiguring hour. For the sadhak, outward struggles, troubles, calamities are only a means of surmounting ego and rajasic desire and attaining to complete surrender. So all struggles are a means to attain to complete surrender. So long as one insists on success, one is doing the work partly at least for the ego. So long as one insists on success, one, that's what we started with, no? What cages us is our desire for success, success in finishing the outline, whatever. So Sri Aurobindo says, so long as one insists on success, one is doing the work partly at least for the ego. Difficulties and outer failures come to warn one that it is so, and to bring complete equality. So, can we ever wrap our minds around the thought that a failure is also a gift of grace? We feel success is a gift of grace, but how can failure be a gift of grace?
More learning.
How, Nash?
Because when you are successful at something, you're complacent. It's an automatic gift of success. When you face a failure, there is a natural evaluation.
When you fail, you look into yourself. Where did I go wrong? What must I improve on? So isn't that a gift of grace? If you... Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's like, often we may have a stream of success and then suddenly bang.
Yes.
And then one huge failure and bring it back to us.
Exactly. Success can make you arrogant, and failure very often brings you a nice humility. You become more tolerant with the incapacities of others when you see your own incapacity, more compassion, more tolerance, more, as he says, a self look into yourself, more speculation, introspection. So that's also a gift. So long as one insists on success, one is doing the work partly at least for the ego. Difficulties and outward failures come to warn one that it is so, and to bring complete equality. This does not mean that the power of victory is not to be acquired, but it is not success in the immediate work that is all important. It is the power to receive and transmit a greater and greater correct vision and inner force that has to be developed. This is a priceless sentence. It is not success in the immediate work that is all important. It is the power to receive and transmit a greater and greater correct vision and inner force. We've all seen whirling dervishes, right? Their one hand is up, one hand is down, and they are whirling. What the Sufi is doing is receive the power and transmit it to the world. That's what the whirling dervish symbolizes. And that's what we have to do in our work, to receive a higher power and transmit it into work. And sometimes it may meet with earthly resistance. You may not immediately see success. But if you have felt the connect, if you're sure you've been true to your truth or the truth that you have seen, then success or failure matters less because you've already enjoyed the process. It's when we don't enjoy the process or the journey that the destination becomes all important, isn't it? But if we've enjoyed the journey, then whatever the destination comes, I've already got my reward in the journey, isn't it? But our whole conditioning, particularly in our education, is chuck the journey, just get the result, get the mark. That's our conditioning right from school, and it never leaves us unless we work hard to change it. The power to receive and transmit a greater and greater correct vision and inner force that has to be developed, and this must be done quite coolly and patiently without being elated or disturbed by immediate victory or failure. In work, it is to do what is best for the work without regard to one's own prestige or convenience, not to regard the work as one's own, but as the mother's, to do it according to rule, discipline, impersonal arrangement, even if conditions are not favorable, to do the best according to the conditions, etc., etc. The impersonal worker puts his best capacity, zeal, industry into the work, but not his personal ambitions, vanity, passions. He has always something in view that is greater than his little personality, and his devotion or obedience to that dictates his conduct. Your difficulty in work is that you regard it too much as your work, my work, so I'm possessive about it. I don't want to share it with others. I don't want others to get the credit for it. I don't want others to shine in the field like me. So all that creates a lot of difficulties. Your difficulty in work is that you regard it too much as your work and from your personal point of view. So questions of personal convenience, ideas, ways of doing things, prestige, demands take a big place, and the result is quarrels. You have to learn to be impersonal. Even in the world, work cannot be well done without that. How much more necessary is it for a sadhak of yoga? So I keep giving this example, which Partho, my Vedanta teacher, had told us once. He said that imagine there's an orchestra, okay, and each instrument is playing its note, and you are the most excellent pianist, but you want the audience to hear your note above all the other notes. So you purposely play the piano louder. It will be jarring. It will be a lack of harmony. That's what we do in all works. We want to be, I'm talking about humanity, not particularly us. We want to be most noticed. We want to be the best. We want to be the most important. All these are that pianist who's playing his note, trying to be louder than the rest. And what could have been a beautiful symphony and an opera gets totally distorted into noise and dissonance. You know, it's like in our body, it works organically because each part is doing its bit without trying to be the most important. The problem with the ego is it wants to be the most important, but nobody can be the most important. Only God is the most important. So to try to be the most important is itself a lost battle. Not only will you lose, but you'll cause so much damage. I often see work starts off so beautifully with a team of like-minded people, and then along the way egos clash. Each one feels they are most important, blah blah blah, and the whole thing falls through. But we should know that everyone has a place. The caste system, Brahma, there will be some Brahmin, there will be somebody who can think very well and get ideas. Then you will need the Kshatriya who will fight the battles to make it happen. There will be the Shudra, there will be the Vaishya who is the executor, the worker who will do the nitty gritty. So each one has its own place. Vaishya is the merchant. Shudra will be the one who's the worker who will do all the nitty gritties. So in any work, in a way there's a caste system, but it's very organic. It's not to say that the Brahmin is superior to the Shudra. Sri Aurobindo, he says the Shudra is as important as the Brahmin. He says for your purposes, it's better to be a good, efficient shoemaker than an incompetent king. An incompetent and indolent king is useless in the yoga. A good shoemaker is more important in his yoga. So everyone has their role without feeling that, and every role is too unique to be compared to the other. So even if I'm, for example, I'm a maths teacher, I'm a really good maths teacher, and Varun is, for example, another maths teacher, really good one. Actually, there's no competition between us because my forte of being good will be unique to me. Varun's forte of being a good maths teacher will be unique to him. So suppose we want to create a really good exam paper, we are colleagues. Instead of fighting with each other, if I bring my best to it and Varun brings his best to it, what a beautiful exam paper will be created. But if Varun wants to prove to the head of the school, I'm the better maths teacher, and I want to prove I'm the better maths teacher, in the bargain everything gets destroyed. That's the impasse humanity is stuck in. And unless we go beyond this, it will be the same thing. Things start well and they fizzle out because of the ego. So, you have to learn to be impersonal. Even in the world, work cannot be well done without that. How much more necessary is it for a sadhak of yoga? Of course, the idea of bigness and smallness is quite foreign to the spiritual truth. Spiritually, there's nothing big or small. Such ideas are like those of the literary person who think writing a poem is a high work and making shoes or cooking the dinner is a small and low one. But all is equal in the eyes of the spirit, and it is only the spirit within with which it is done that matters. It is the same with a particular kind of work. There is nothing big or small. It's like mother was making her evolutionary experiments with cats. You know that, no? During her occult work, she had made a pact with the king of cats, and somebody asked her, what is the king of cats? So she says, in the vital world there's an essence which governs the consciousness of a particular species. That essence was the king of the cats. Probably he had made a pact with her to help in evolution. So she was very interested in cats. You know that she had a pet Kiki, and she used to personally supervise the making of a particular pudding for cats. And imagine, mother used to do that. She had so many important things to do, but to her making that pudding for the cat was as important as. There was another story I read today that we've all been to the Park guest house, and we know when the seafront wall to the guest house was to be built, architects just couldn't do it because the sea was so strong that it would get built and it would get washed away. And one company actually took it up, tried for 2 years, and then just fled without telling the mother. Then finally when an architect came, the mother said, okay, take me to that spot, and he took her there. And she said, till where do you need the waters to not come in? Where are you building this? So he walked into a certain length and he said, till here, if the waters come beyond this, all my work gets undone. So mother says, okay, get your easy chair tomorrow and put it where you're standing, and the work will be done. And she said, she asked him for how long do you need the sea not to come. I don't remember, he must have said 2 weeks or something. And he put that easy chair, and for 2 weeks the water didn't cross beyond that, and that's how we have the park guest house wall, and it has never been eroded by the sea, which is quite a thing because the sea is so strong, and you know how corrosive it is for homes near the sea. This is a wall which is right on the brink of it. So what I'm saying is that kind of work she would take as much care over as making a pudding for the cats. So Sri Aurobindo says, the hand that hurls Jupiter into space spends all its cunning fashioning a curl. A curl is not less important to God. Similarly, for us also, we shouldn't think that work which gets us acclaim in the eyes of the world is more important than looking after people at home, cooking, whatever. All that is as important. It's more important if it's done in the right spirit. If the outer work is strengthening the ego for the purposes of yoga, it's less important than work you do at home, simplicity with no eyes to watch you. But all is equal in the eyes of the spirit, and it is only the spirit within with which it is done that matters. It is the same with a particular kind of work. There is nothing big or small. It is not that you have to do what you dislike, but you have to cease to dislike. A tall order, no? It's not that you have to do what you dislike, but you have to cease to dislike. Very often we are doing work we don't like to do. So she's saying you have to cease to dislike. How can we cease to dislike? When we are not drawing our enjoyment solely from the technique of work. When we are drawing our enjoyment by opening to the mother, feeling her acting through us. That's when we can cease to dislike. To do only what you like is to indulge the vital and maintain its domination over the nature, for that is the very principle of the untransformed nature, to be governed by its likes and dislikes. To be able to do anything with equanimity is the principle of karma yoga, and to do it with joy because it's done for the mother is the true psychic and vital condition in this yoga. Remembering the divine in work. It is not at first easy to remember the presence in work, but if one revives the sense of the presence immediately after the work is over, it is all right. In time, the sense of presence will become automatic even in work. So, Sri Aurobindo says that it's enough if to start with you invoke the presence before you start the work, before you start studying whatever, and after. And in the middle, when you're getting overwhelmed, stop, connect, restart. All the difficulties you describe are quite natural things common to most people. It is easy for one comparatively to remember and be conscious when one sits quiet in meditation. It is difficult when one has to be busy with work. The remembrance and consciousness in work have to come by degrees. You must not expect to have it all at once. Nobody can get it all at once. It comes in two ways. First, if one practices remembering the mother and offering the work to her each time one does something. Not all the time one is doing, but at the beginning or whatever or whenever one can remember. Then that slowly becomes easy and habitual to the nature. Secondly, by the meditation, an inner consciousness begins to develop, which after a time, not at once or suddenly, becomes more and more automatically permanent. One feels this as a separate consciousness from the outer one which works. At first, this separate consciousness is not felt when one is working, but as soon as the work stops, one feels it was there all the time watching from behind. Afterwards, it begins to be felt during the work itself as if there were two parts of oneself, one watching and supporting from behind and remembering the mother and offering to her, and the other doing the work. When this happens, then to work with true consciousness becomes more and more easy. So what Sri Aurobindo is saying is, it's very, very important because this is something that's accessible to all of us. All of us maybe can't sit in contemplation, meditation, but this is something that's really available to all of us. So before we start any studies, any work, to just remember the mother and just pray to her that you work through me, you study through me. Remember, even if I feel my intelligence is limited, that's only in my surface being. The deeper intelligence is all-knowing. And when you call to the mother, you're calling to that deeper intelligence to flow into you. So you invite that into you. And so just to give you an example of this, once it happened in the middle of the night. Suddenly we heard a gushing of water, my husband and I. And we saw that in the pipe of a tap, God knows how, there had been a crack and water was gushing out in great volumes. And if that wasn't stopped, the whole tank would be emptied by morning. Somewhere where the pipe meets the tap in that region. And we tried calling plumbers and whoever we had access to. 2 o'clock in the night, nobody replied. We didn't have an address to go to, so we didn't know what to do. We tried tying a cloth, nothing worked. So then we just went to bed, but obviously, like everyone, I have a feeling for water. It hurts me to see so much water being wasted. So I really prayed to Mother and I said, you have to do something. And I kept telling Percy, because he's clever with these things, that do something. He said, now don't bug me. I've tried all I can. Now I can't do anything. And he went to sleep. Then suddenly I was praying. He got up. He went to that tap. I don't know what he did. The water stopped. Then next morning we called the plumber to look into it. And he said, ये किसने रिपेयर किया, क्या भेजा चलाया है, ये तो मैं भी नहीं सोच सकता था. So I just feel that one hand my prayer, and maybe Percy is open to that kind of intelligence. He's never done plumbing, he knows nothing about it, but he channeled that and he could fix the leak. So that's available to all of us if we really want. So Mother says it, before you start working, you invoke. When you're feeling overwhelmed, don't continue feeling overwhelmed. Stop. Reconnect with Mother. There's that beautiful Zen saying, no, 7/8 and 1/8. If any work to be done is taken as a fraction, 8 upon 8, one whole, 7/8 of it is about keeping yourself whole while doing it, and only 1/8 is the actual work to be done. If you sacrifice the 7/8, the 1/8 is lost. So if you're all jittery and hyper and aggressive, or frightened while doing, then the quality of your work is anyway compromised. So then take a break. Do whatever you can to get back to wholeness, connect with mother, and then continue. And then she says there'll come a time when you will feel her constantly, but he says it doesn't happen overnight. That happens as a progressive thing, that you'll feel her working through you, and Janina, the one who wrote The Captive of Her Love, a devotee of the mother who was with her when the mother was in her body, she used to run the mother's nursing home, do a lot of work. But she told mother, Ma, you're my eternal holiday, because I constantly feel you working through me, and what I call myself is on holiday mode. So it's such a beautiful phrase to repeat in your heart. Suppose your lower back is tight with overwork, head is tight with overwork, and we did this in class yesterday, just to focus on that body part and just articulate, Ma, you're my eternal holiday, and to really feel it in the heart. And you'll actually feel how that body part relaxes if you have a blessing of really connecting with the mother. So after yesterday's meditation class, where we did this in the body on each part, there's one person who has a condition where it's difficult for her to get her periods and whatever. And she messaged me that she did this in her body and she felt so peaceful that she slept well after nights, and in the morning she got her period and it was regular and it was good. So it's not just a thought. Mother's force is something that directly impacts the body. It can heal you at a very physical level. I mean, it's the only thing that really heals you at a very physical level. So secondly, by the meditation, an inner consciousness begins to develop, which after a time, not at once or suddenly, becomes more and more automatically permanent. One feels this as a separate consciousness from that outer one which works. At first, this separate consciousness is not felt when one is working, but as soon as the work stops, one feels it was there all the time, watching from behind. Afterwards, it begins to be felt during the work itself, as if there were two parts of oneself, one watching and supporting from behind and remembering the mother and offering to her, and the other doing the work. When this happens, then to work with the true consciousness becomes more and more easy. Sri Aurobindo, Letters on Yoga. It is the same with all the rest. It is by the development of the inner consciousness that all the things you speak of will be set right. It is by the development of the inner consciousness that all the things you speak of will be set right. For instance, it is a part of the being that has utsa for the work, another that feels the pressure of quietude and is not so disposed to work. Your mood depends on which comes up at the time. It is so with all people. To combine the two is difficult, but a time comes when they do get reconciled. One remains poised in an inner concentration, while the other is supported by it in its push towards work. The transformation of the nature, the harmonizing of all these discordant things in the being, are the work of sadhana. Therefore, you need not be discouraged by observing these things in you. There is hardly anybody who has not found these things in himself. All this can be arranged by the action of the inner force, with the constant consent and call of the sadhak. By himself, he may not be able to do it, but with the divine force working within, all can be done. receiving the divine power or force. To be able to receive the divine power and let it act through you in the things of the outward life. And this is the crux of yoga, to receive the divine power and let it act through you in the outward life. There are 3 necessary conditions, Sri Aurobindo says. 1, quietude, equality, not to be disturbed by anything that happens, to keep the mind still and firm, seeing the play of forces but itself tranquil. In other words, to access the witness poise, to watch the play of thoughts and emotions without getting involved. 2, absolute faith, faith that what is for the best will happen. Not what I want, but what is for the best will happen, that faith. But also that if one can make oneself a true instrument, the fruit will be that which one's will, guided by the divine light, sees as the thing to be done. Kartavyam karma. To act because the divine wills it, not for any fruit, not for any reward. And to have the faith. See, normally if things don't go the way that I want them to, my faith shakes. But even when they don't go the way I want them to have the faith that once I've called in the mother, she will do what's best, and what's mine will know my face and come to me. I don't have to race after it, but chase after it. But also after a point, I don't even feel anything is mine. After a point, I feel everything is the mother's, and all I want is to feel her presence constantly. Then whatever the outcome of the work, it's secondary. See, we feel praise, appreciation make us happy, and they do. There's no taking away from that. But when we feel the mother's presence, can we compare the joy of that to the joy of recognition, praise, success? Let's honestly discuss, can we really compare the two? What do you all feel? Be honest. Yeah?
How I see it is,
Loudly.
one is loud but doesn't sustain.
Huh.
The praise is loud, momentary spike is high. It's much higher than the other one. The second one is subtler but it's more consistent. It can be returned back to.
Yes, when you say higher, it's more obvious, it's more tangible.
It's in the sense, higher in the sense that it's more spicier as a meal.
It's more stimulating.
It stimulates you more, it gives you more of a sensation of excitement. This second one isn't something which is exciting in its nature. It's not something which will excite you, which will keep you getting, it's a different kind of a subtle feeling of consistency. You feel balanced, you feel aligned, you feel in sync. And somewhere, if you keep wanting that other, praises always give you different tastes.
Yes.
It's always different. Different praises will give you different tastes. This is consistent. When you return back to it, you're like, back to it.
Yes.
It's like that feeling of a home.
Yes.
This is like guest houses.
Yes.
Different guest houses will give you different
And that too, when you say it's more stimulating, yes. But if you really remember, the point is when you're not feeling the mother's presence, even the memory of it is not very tangible. So you feel, it's an inferior thing. But if you go deep into the memory, you'll feel so full, so satiated, so whole that it's not even comparable to that spike. So
It's because it's more apparent, as you
it's
said.
more tangible.
It's something which you can believe you feel more regular.
Yes.
It's more
The
comfortable.
other thing is so subtle that even its memory fades when you're not with it.
Yeah.
So you feel this is better, but really ask yourself very logically, which is a better state of being? Which fills me more, makes me more whole, more with myself? then if you really decide that that is what I want more, and you live your whole life seeking that more than just egoistic appreciation, praise, then that's the game changer. But it's about changing the taste buds of our being. We want that spicy stimulation.
Because sometimes you crave that more than this. As a
Most
certain-
of the
as a
times.
personal observation that I have seen is many times I'm craving this more than that, and that I sense is in this moment I want that, and I am selfish and I accept it. Instead of believing I don't want it, I want that recognition.
True, true.
At that moment, that acceptance I think so is important, because I sometimes find you're neither here, neither there. Because
Sure. So accept it, but also work with it, because of course there are levels of consciousness and unconsciousness, and this choice at that level is an unconscious choice, because you're choosing the abyss over the height. I know that, but still I'm choosing. But let me remind myself that yeah, it's gripping me, I'm giving into it, but someday I want to be able to choose better. At least keep that as an aspiration.
But it happens.
Yes.
Today is an example for me as well, because there is my event is happening. I didn't go to the event because I wanted to come here. So the choice was
So
there.
Nash has choreographed an event,
So there I
but
was
you
like-
had the choice of not going.
they had called me. I was one of the guests.
Ha,
I had to sit with the guests on the podium.
ha,
I was going to get recognition and things.
ha.
I said, but will that be important in the long run? The question that came in for me was, that will be more stimulating,
Ha.
but that will not give me something sustained for the week.
Lovely, lovely.
That was the choice. It was a very apparent choice today for me.
Yes.
There was a recognition there, but this gave me something much more sustainable.
This makes you recognize the mother.
Yeah.
That would recognize you. So
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good
Right
example.
choice is like it has a domino effect. You make the right choice once, and then slowly you're compelled to make more and more right choices.
Right.
The wrong choice makes you uncomfortable.
Right, right, right. Quietude, equality, not to be disturbed by anything that happens, to keep the mind still and firm, seeing the play of forces, but itself tranquil. Absolute faith, faith that what is for the best will happen. And 3, receptivity, the power to receive the divine force and to feel its presence and the presence of the mother in it, and allow it to work, guiding one's sight and will and action. If this power and presence can be felt, and this plasticity made the habit of the consciousness in action, but plasticity to the divine force alone, without bringing in any foreign element, the eventual result is sure. So to receive the divine force, what are the 3 things that are necessary? The witness, poise, quietude. 2, faith, faith in the mother and her working. And 3, the capacity to receive her force, which all you can do is aspire, but finally she works on your matter to make it more receptive.
Yeah, because here, unless you have a point of reference, you don't even know it exists.
Yeah.
Like most people are functioning on Artha Kama. So unless you know there's something else, you're going to just remain in that.
But that doesn't apply to any of us here, right? So,
I think you need a all 3.
you need what?
For her, grace.
Of course.
All 3.
Of course, everything is grace. But yeah, what I'm saying is at least faith you can feed, quietude you can step back, receptivity I guess you can just pray and aspire. Order, harmony and organization in physical things is a necessary part of efficiency and perfection, and make the instrument more fit for whatever work is given to it. To be able to be regular is a great force. one becomes master of one's time and one's movements. So she says to be organized and regular with physical things helps you to be a better channel and an instrument for her forces. So she says to be able to be regular, disciplined about various things in your day is a great force. One becomes the master of one's time and movement. Otherwise, time is in the hand of random things. But if you have discipline and organization, you become a master of one's time and one's movements. Anything to share, anyone? Any questions? Yeah? Yeah. Loud, Bijal? Otherwise, take the mic.
So there's this thing I heard in a talk by Anahita where someone was not
Bijal, please take the mic. Otherwise, people won't hear you.
So I was listening to this talk by Anahita, and in that talk there was this person, someone in the ashram who was not well. So it was informed to the mother that this person's not well, and the first thing she asked is he still going to work? Because then my force can act and he'll be fine.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So her force acts the most during work. So beautiful. Okay, people. Next week, I want you to again bring little, even 1 or 2 sentences of what you liked. I mean, let this be a collective thing. No, it's so beautiful. So all of you look out, and not just Savitri, any writing of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, just something short which you could bring into your life, and let's collectively share. Just message me by Friday if you're bringing something, so I know how to arrange it. Yeah? Chalo, let's sit tall, let's assimilate. In Sri Aurobindo's yoga, work is given a very special place, because when we work, Mother's force can have a direct effect on our outer being, on our emotional vital nature, and transform it. During meditation, work is largely done on our inner being. But during work, that's the moment our vital and our outer being can be transformed. Normally, we cannot connect joy and doing in the same breath, because our conditioning tells us that doing means stress, doing means pressure, doing means gritting my teeth with fear and anxiety and getting the target. But Mother and Sri Aurobindo invite us to do walking the sunlit path. What is the sunlit path? The constant remembrance that I am not the doer. The Divine, the Mother, from behind her veil, is doing everything through me. So, the joy of doing is in offering all my capacities, which are her gifts to me, back to her to be used for her purposes. To constantly feel and remind myself that it is she who is doing can give me a poise of great repose even while working. One of the sadhaks, Janina, although she was in the midst of intense activity through the day, wrote to Mother telling her, Mother, you are my eternal holiday. I'm in a constant poise of holiday mode because I've left it all to you. I know that you are doing all through me. So whenever I work, to remind myself that the real worker is the Mother. And the more I let go of the pressure to achieve targets, personal biases, egoism, the more she'll flow through me. The less I'm working out of personal bias, the more, Sri Aurobindo says, I'll have the capacity to see the truth in the moment and pull it into manifestation. And the more I'm able to do this, the higher the level to which my work is raised. So to never feel responsible for the work, Mother has said so beautifully that even for one moment in your life, if you felt true love for me, I am chained to you. I have put a golden chain around your heart, and you are my responsibility for lifetimes to come. All of us have felt at least that one moment of love, so all our work is her responsibility. Let me work in that spirit. And Sri Aurobindo says there's always an impetus, a motive behind work, and in ordinary life, it's an ego boost, an ego affirmation, appreciation, outer success. But he says, change that. Drop the desire for outer success, or even if it's there, remind yourself that there's something higher you can reach for. Instead of the motive being outer success, let my motive be to feel the mother while doing the work, to remember her as often as I can while doing it, and to feel the joy of working, which comes when I recognize that she is working through me. In myself, I'm nothing. I can do nothing. But in her, I can be everything. So let me enjoy that faith. So Sri Aurobindo says, to be receptive to her, 3 things are required. Quietude, a witness poise that steps back and watches. Faith, that whatever the outcome, it comes to me from the mother, and it has to be for the highest good. Thirdly, receptivity, which comes by dropping personal biases, opening to her grace, receiving her force, and bringing it into work. So throughout the week, at least at the beginning of work and at the end, let me offer the work. Whenever I feel overwhelmed, let me stop. Let me reconnect. Let me invite her into the equation, and let me see if I can actually say joy and doing in the same breath and mean it. Hands together in a namaste at the heart. Take a long, slow inhalation. Breathe out with Om.